start the fight, breaking down the walls in the dead of night. I don't come for peace, I come for the storm. Fanboys melt quick when the truth gets warm. Saw content's high, I'm collecting those tears. Just got started, but I'm cutting through fears. I'm not here for brand deals, I'm not for sale. I expose your lies, rip off the veil.
Let's take a step back and have an honest conversation about the Nintendo Switch 2 and its so-called unstoppable success, because if you've been listening to the fanboys lately, you think this console is rewriting history, breaking records left and right, and that Nintendo has absolutely nothing to worry about. But the reality, the picture isn't nearly as rosy as they want you to believe. Now sure, at launch the Switch 2 sold quickly. That's what happens with any major console release. Excitement is at its peak, die-hard fans line up, scalpers swoop in, and the headlines scream about massive sellouts. But here's the problem, those sellouts didn't last. Within months, the Switch 2 was sitting comfortably on the shelves in the US, and Japan followed soon after. And unlike the PlayStation 5 or even the Xbox Series X at launch, those systems didn't vanish the second they appeared. They didn't spark bidding wars on eBay for double the price. They just sat there. That alone should tell you demand is cooling faster than expected. Let's break down why. First, the sales curve is already flattening. By now, Nintendo should still be coasting off that launch hype, yet the numbers don't lie. The momentum is weaker than projected. Fanboys will point to the 2 million milestone like it's earth-shattering news, but remember, this is the launch window. If anything, sales should be accelerating. Instead, we're seeing a plateau forming, the exact opposite of what you want during the critical first year of a console's life. Second, let's talk about the pricing. The Switch 2 is hovering in that $450 to $500 range for most consumers, often bundled with games like Mario Kart World. Now on the surface, the price doesn't seem unreasonable for a brand new console, but here's the kicker. Japan is getting the system for the equivalent of around $330, which makes it feel like everyone else is paying an inflated premium just to get it in the door. And when you look at the launch lineup, it gets worse. Mario Kart World, a game that should feel like a fun evergreen title, comes across as heavily overpriced. Nintendo is leaning on its name recognition to justify that tag. That simply doesn't line up with the actual value. Then you've got DK Bonanza, a game slapped with a full $70 price point despite not having enough quality content to justify it. That's the kind of nickel and diming that leaves players questioning whether Nintendo is prioritizing fans or just milking loyalty. Third-party support is already looking shaky. We've seen EA stumble out of the gate, we've seen split-screen modes get cut from titles, and we've already seen Microsoft quietly backtrack on promises of bringing Call of Duty to the platform. That is not the kind of momentum that builds confidence in a system's long-term health. If anything, it's deja vu from the original Switch. Lots of hype, some third-party experiments, and then a steady retreat once publishers realize the sales don't justify the extra development effort. Fanboys will scream about Cyberpunk or Hogwarts Legacy making it over, but those are one-off projects, not consistent pipelines of support. And here's the harsh truth, third-party developers care more about returns on investment, not loyalty to Nintendo's brand. Why spend millions optimizing a demand title for weaker hardware, when the payoff is mediocre sales? On a Steam Deck, that same title just runs, it's still a PC game. On the Switch 2, it needs special treatment. And when the treatment doesn't result in enough profit, those companies will move on, leaving Nintendo to rely once again on its third-party lineup to carry the console. Now, does Nintendo have killer exclusives? Absolutely, and those games will sell millions. Well, maybe not DK Bonanza, we have yet to sit here and get the sales data of that game. But exclusives alone can't sustain the illusion of explosive console growth. We've seen this movie before. The Wii had lightning in a bottle success, but it follows up with the Wii U, flopped previously because casual audiences moved on and core gamers weren't convinced. I'm not saying the Switch 2 will be a Wii U, but the warning signs are there. Early demand is already dipping, pricing is unappealing, and the hardware gap compared to the other platforms is glaring. On top of that, the new exclusives we've seen so far are already overpriced and underwhelming. Mario Kart World is essentially an $80 reskin with modest tweaks instead of a true leap forward, while DK Bonanza doesn't offer enough quality content to justify a $70 price tag. If these are the flagship titles meant to showcase why the Switch 2 is worth it, they aren't exactly sending the strongest message. So where does this leave us? With fanboys celebrating numbers that don't mean what they think they mean, 2 million sold in the US isn't proof of endless demand, it's proof of demand being satisfied. Scalpers aren't making huge profits, shelves are staying stocked, and unless Nintendo delivers massive first-party announcements, something like a groundbreaking new 3D Mario, or a guaranteed blockbuster, or how about the release dates for Metro Prime 4? How about the release dates for the Kirby Air Riders? How about release dates for many other games that we all know that they're coming out? The Switch 2 is heading for a year of steady but underwhelming sales, not a runaway juggernaut. And here's the bigger picture. Nintendo is repeating history. They're banking on nostalgia, banking on loyalty, and assuming that people will just accept less power, weaker third-party support, and higher prices because it's Nintendo. But times have changed. Consumers are more aware. Alternatives like Steam Deck, ROG Ally, and even budget gaming PCs are out there, reshaping expectations. The Switch 2 isn't competing in a vacuum, it's competing in a crowded market where the bar for the value has been raised. I do think Nintendo has the potential to sell 80 million units of the Switch 2, especially if they keep pumping out first-party titles that appeal to their core audience. Nintendo's first-party games have always been their bread and butter, and that loyal fan base will buy the console just to play them. But the bigger issue here is the third-party support, or rather, the lack of it. There's already signs that third-party developers may start dipping out, leaving Nintendo once again relying almost entirely on its own catalog. And if that happens, it's Nintendo's fault. They could have nurtured a stronger ecosystem, but instead, early signals suggest the Switch 2 might end up in the same position the Wii U was. Popular among fans, but lacking the broad appeal to sustain long-term growth. Right now, the high cost of games is the major problem. As it stands, there's particularly only one game on the Switch 2 worth buying, and that's a $15 title called Fast Fusion. Sure, there are some great exclusives, but Nintendo has started pricing its games to match the AAA industry standard, and the problem is that many other titles don't meet that level of polish or content depth. Look at Mario Kart World. It's a fun game, no doubt, but it's about $30 overpriced compared to what it actually delivers. Then there's DK Bonanza, which simply does not have enough quality content to justify a $70 price tag. And don't get me started on Welcome Tour, a game that feels more like a tech demo than a full experience, yet it's being sold separately for $10 instead of being a pack-in. It doesn't stop there. We've already seen 2 Switch 2 Edition games hitting $80 and $90 with minimal DLC upgrades or added value. And now they've released a new game for $20 called Drag X Drive, which isn't even fun. It could have been pack-in and the game still would have sucked. The pattern is clear. Nintendo is pushing greed over value. They need to humble themselves and reconsider how they price their games. Consumers are feeling it, and it's impacting the perception of the system itself. Now, to be fair, this could all change. Nintendo has the opportunity to turn things around. They could finally announce release dates for games we actually know are coming. They could start pricing games more reasonably, especially in relation to their content delivered. They could give fans insights into other upcoming titles and revamp their approach to things like game keycards, which feel outdated and unnecessary. If they take these steps, they could restore goodwill and reinforce why Nintendo's system remains must-have. But until then, the Switch 2 risks being seen as overpriced, underwhelming, and out of touch with its own audience expectations. So let the fanboys keep celebrating. Let them insist this console is the future, that every bundle, every announcement, every trailer proves Nintendo is untouchable. They'll point to pre-orders, early sales spikes, and their own excitement as proof that the Switch 2 is desired to dominate the market. And sure, for a moment it might feel that way, but numbers don't lie and the trends tell a far more complicated story. Early demand is already showing signs of softening, third-party support is shaky, and pricing has left a lot of consumers hesitant. The Switch 2 isn't failing, not yet, but it is also not the unstoppable juggernaut some people want you to believe. Hype can only carry a console so far. Consumers may buy a system at launch out of loyalty, curiosity, or fear of missing out, but long-term success relies on consistent value and meaningful content. Right now, Nintendo is leaning heavily on brand recognition and first-party titles, but without a stronger ecosystem, reasonable pricing, and the third-party support, that momentum is fragile. If the company doesn't course correct, if they continue releasing overpriced, underwhelming titles while assuming the hype alone will carry them, the Switch 2 could quickly become less of a triumph and more of a cautionary tale. A story about a company that thought past success guaranteed future dominance, that believed hype was sustainable for substance, and that failed to learn from its own history. That is a moment where Nintendo has a choice. They can either listen to the market, deliver quality, and adjust their strategy, or they can keep riding the wave of nostalgia and fan devotion. And if they make the wrong choice, the Switch 2 won't be remembered as a revolutionary console. It will be remembered as a warning of what happens when even the most beloved company assume hype is enough to carry them forever. And now it's time to read off the members of the channel. We got Koros Objective, Maximilian Pegasus 88, Matt Fox 94, Shade Milkman, Oh No It's Justin, Brian Payne, Andy Ritz, Jay Wesby 65, C-Stars Piplup, Astrius Lane, Maximus 2400, and John Molina. Thank you so much for becoming part of the crew. And if you truly enjoy this content, why don't you think about becoming a member? It's only $1 a month. You get special emotes, badges, and you get a shout out at the end of each video until it becomes too long, and then it'll be turned into a credit roll. And also, I got an awesome merch lined up for you guys. I got amazing shirts, hoodies, I got coffee mugs, I got desk mats, I got a bunch of different kinds, so why don't you check it out also. And please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, guys, stay vigilant.
You can cry in the comments, but you won't survive. Like and subscribe if you feel that vibe. We're hard